The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha. Homage to the Dharma. Homage to the Sangha. Well, we've just had the festival for Baisaja Guru, the Buddha of healing. He heals us in body, spirit, heart, mind. And he's like the healing aspect of the Dharma. It's not like there's a person called Baisaja Guru whom we're praying to. It's more like that aspect of the Dharma that heals us, because the Dharma is a medicine for all suffering. The Buddha would often say he was like a doctor who would prescribe different medicines for different people, because people were different. They'd have different situations, different needs, and he would say different things to people, but it was always basically the same Dharma, just in a different form for different people. He'd speak to kings, courtesans, merchants, farmers, untouchables, and so they don't call them untouchables anymore, but what do they call them? Dalits. But I think they thought of them untouchable back then as they do now. Housewives, anybody, he would talk to and help them, if he could. But he couldn't help everybody, because some people didn't want the medicine of the Dharma. They came to argue with him, or to have some kind of a fight. And sometimes they would see that he had actually a lot more wisdom than they did, and suddenly they just stamp away. And he couldn't do anything about that, because in order to take medicine, you have to want the medicine, and then you have to take it. Otherwise it's not going to work. He couldn't save people who didn't want to help themselves. He wasn't a savior. We have to take the medicine. We have to first want the medicine. That's why we're here. And then we have to take it. To be willing to practice the teaching of the Buddha, which helps us with all our suffering. And sometimes the medicine's sweet, and sometimes it's a little bitter, just like any other medicine. But if it helps us, it's well worth it. It helps us with our life. And it's up to us to take the medicine, to practice the Dharma. The basic practice of sitting still, which is the basic thing we try to do to help with suffering, sitting still in the midst of all the conditions that arise for us, our external conditions, our conditions of mind, all the things that come our way, internal and external, sitting still in the midst of all of that. Practicing meditation every day. It's really helpful, even just a little bit. It seems so simple, but it's life-changing to practice meditation every day of our life, as we best can. Sometimes we're sick, sometimes we can't do it, but by and large, even just for a few minutes, just to get up and sit. It's life-changing, just that little simple practice. It nourishes us, giving ourselves that little space, that little gift every day. It helps nourish the heart and helps with all our suffering. Even when we feel our meditation is not very good, or we've only just started, or we get distracted all the time, or we're restless and we just want to be doing something else. Oh God, I've been sitting here for 5 minutes and I just want to get on with my life and have my cup of coffee. Even like that, it still helps us. It's amazing how that simple practice of meditation, just doing our best, without a lot of judgment about how terrible our meditation is or how wonderful our meditation is, but just to do it faithfully every day, it's life-changing. And it's a great blessing that we don't have to be perfect at it for it to help, otherwise we'd never get started. Our faithful effort every day, that little practice of faith, just to say, this will help me, I will do it. A little kindness to ourselves. I'm going to do this, even if I don't think I've got the time. Sit for 5 minutes. Well, maybe I can sit a bit longer. It's getting ourselves to do it. That's the hard part. Makes a huge difference. And then when we're there, sitting, looking at the suffering in our own mind, our past mistakes, our past hurts, the things that have happened to us, our habits of mind, jealousy or anger or fear that arise. We all have these habits of mind. The thing we come back to is our kind of default, to see what that is, to see our own patterns, and to try to let them go. Oh, here I am getting anxious again. Maybe it won't happen. Maybe I can just sit still in the midst of it and let it come and go, and not, I should squash it down. No, I don't think about that. Or get overly bound up with our own anxiety, fear, worry and all that. Or anger, irritation, resentment, those kinds of things. We all have these habits of mind, of whatever they may be, and to see them, and to sit still in the midst of them, accept them, and let them go, makes a huge difference. Acceptance. Acceptance is a large part of our practice, as they're saying. Acceptance is the key that unlocks the gateless gate. Well, that's a huge statement if you think about it. Acceptance unlocks the gateless gate, helps us to find the truth. Just acceptance sounds simple. Well, it is, but it's not easy. To accept the way we are, to accept the things that have happened to us, accept the things we've done, the things that people have done to us, to accept the way the world is, to accept all of that. That's huge. But as we can just practice acceptance, it immeasurably helps us with that suffering. Because it's the non-acceptance, it's the suffering. I want something else. I don't like this. I want it to be different. Accepting our circumstances. We can't change the past. We can't change the things we've done. We can't always change our present situation. But we can work on our mind, and we can work on how we view it, rather than seeing it as some kind of obstacle. Or when my living situation changes, then I'll be able to meditate. Or when I've got a better job, then I'll be able to sit still. It'll be fine. This is it. It's probably not going to get much better. We might as well accept it as it is. Do our best with it in this moment. Sometimes we need to make a change. Sometimes we can't make a change. Sometimes we can. But to do our best with whatever we've got right now, to sit still in the midst of that and see it as something that can help us, not as an obstacle, but as something that is very grist for the mill, the thing that can actually help us to develop patience, kindness, sympathy. We may be in a difficult situation. Other people are too. Accepting our shortcomings, our faults. Seeing them clearly, but with kindness and compassion. Not just judging ourselves, not harsh criticism. Oh, I'm just so awful. Oh, I'm such an angry person. Oh, I'm so greedy. I can never do anything about this. Just think, okay, I have a problem with anger. Let's see if I can work on it. Of course I can. Just to be willing to do something and to trust that we can do something. Not giving up on ourselves, but just saying, what can I do about this? First, to sit still and to see these things as they are and not try and pretend they're not there, not try and justify them. How do I work with this? To see clearly is necessary before we can do anything. Seeing clearly and kindly. Kindly has to be. Otherwise, if we're seeing with judgment, we're seeing through a dark pair of spectacles. If we can see with kindness, it helps a whole lot. Then we can see more clearly, and we can start to accept what we've got to work with. Accepting other people as they are. We can't change other people. They can change themselves. We can't change them, but we can change our attitude towards them. Somebody who drives us crazy at work, well, this person has been sent to teach me patience. Maybe not exactly, but I can learn patience by working with this person or living with this person. Somebody the other day said, our life here as monks is a little bit like going to work and never coming home, because you're with these people all the time, And that is our practice of living together. It's a great joy, and it can be a great challenge, as all of us know. We're not perfect. But we actually use that situation to train ourselves. Rav Mataji said it was like putting rocks in a rock tumbler. They used to have these things, you put them all in and they'd all come out all nice and smooth because they all bang off against each other and knock their corners off. Well, it's like that. And she was a great believer in the rock tumbler. I am too, because I see how it works. To change our attitude towards the people we live, work with, the people we see, the people in the news, to change our attitude a little bit towards others, to change how we think of them, to be a little less critical, less critical of ourselves and less critical of other people, to accept people as they are. We're not going to change them, but we can do something about ourselves. Paying attention to what we're doing, what we're saying, what we're thinking. If I'm behaving nicely, but I've got these nasty little thoughts in my mind, well, it's better than yelling at somebody, but it's not very good. If I can soften my thinking, then I can soften my actions and my speech. They all work together. We can't pretend to be a perfectly equanimous person if they're seething with rage. No one's going to be fooled by that. Neither are we. But if we can work on our own shortcomings, our own criticism, our own habits of mind, to pay attention. What am I doing? What am I saying to this person? And what am I thinking, What's going on in my mind when I'm beginning to get upset or angry or afraid or defensive or all those things that we tend to get reactive about, to see how they work. Here I am getting into this situation where I feel trapped. And I know from experience that often I will lash out. Well, when you start getting ourselves backed into a corner, just be careful to take care. No one's going to kill me, Or whatever it might be, whatever situations tend to bring up a great reactivity in us. We all have our little things like that. To see ourselves heading towards that. And just to sit, to say, let's just be still here. Let's not just react. Taking a breath before we say something or do something. Just a little moment, to give ourselves a little moment of kindness, to let a little bit of wisdom in, a little bit of compassion in that little breath. It's amazing how much trouble we can avert by simply taking a breath before we say something we wish we hadn't said, or done something we wish we hadn't done. Making a decision, giving ourselves a bit of time. Maybe we don't have to make a snap decision right now. Sometimes we might. Even then, I think we just about always just take a breath. People in, fire fighters, I'm sure they don't just charge into the flames. I'm sure they assess, what do we do here? Right. You're much more effective if you can just take a moment before you react to something, even an extreme situation, to just take a moment before making a life-changing decision. Give yourself some time. What's good to do here? Not just rushing into something. Letting a little coolness into the heat of the moment. Not getting stampeded into something, or thinking we're stampeded into something. And as I said, when we allow a little space like that, we allow wisdom to arise, and we allow compassion to arise. There's room for them to just poke their heads up. Are you sure you want to do that? Is that really a kind thing to say? Maybe not. Maybe I'll bite it back. Wisdom to see more clearly what's going on. I'm getting angry. I really seem to have an investment in this thing. What am I worried about? What is it? What am I afraid of? What's my agenda here? Why am I so, invested in this matter? And compassion. Compassion for ourselves, for our upset or whatever it is. Compassion in another person. If we're about to get into a fight with somebody, compassion. Maybe their upset isn't about me at all. Maybe they're upset about something else. And even if they are upset about me, maybe I can give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I did something that really worried them or frightened them or offended them in some way, and I've been oblivious. Practicing the precepts which help us to stop creating suffering for ourselves and for other beings. The precepts are a description of the way a Buddha lives. Buddhas keep to the precept. You can't imagine a Buddha stealing something or yelling at somebody or, being unkind, harming somebody. And we can try and live that way too. The 3 pure precepts we talked about yesterday. Cease from evil, do only good, do good for others. Simple. 3 we can keep track of. And it's when we're trying to decide something sometimes, to consider, what's his not doing harm here? How can I not do harm? How can I cease from evil, i.e. cease from doing harm? How can I do what's good? How can I do what's good for other beings? What's the best thing to do here? Just that little breath, or maybe quite a while, to decide what's best to do here. The precepts, wonderful help for us. Well, that's us. Well, now we've got our whole world full of suffering. And all the suffering we see on the news, or that we hear about, that we see every day. How can our practice help our world? Again, we've talked about this a little bit. But I think it's really, and I've talked about it a lot actually, but I think it's so vital now that we do our best to practice the Dharma, to help all beings, because we're all connected. And how can this medicine of the Dharma help us to heal the suffering in the world? Well, we can't take away all the suffering of the world. There's a limit to how much we can do, but we can do something. We can do something about ourselves. We can work on our own greed and desire and anger and fear and all that. We all have these things. We all have anger and ill will and fear and greed and all that. We've all got them. It's what we do with them that makes a difference. First, not blindly acting on them, and then not speaking from them, and then trying not to cultivate angry, hurtful, greedy thoughts, fearful. If we're afraid, if we're constantly anxious, actually we're harming ourselves. If we can work on our anxiety and fear, work on our irritation, work on these little things, it actually is helping us to relinquish creating suffering for ourselves. We are people too. It's not just helping the whole world, but helping ourselves. Then if we're less reactive, then that helps everybody. So if we meet with unkindness or negativity, we're less likely to respond in the same way. We're more likely to respond with patience and a little compassion. Even if you don't do anything, just not reacting in an angry way, that helps, otherwise it just continues. Looking at these things in ourselves, at our own ill will, seeing what triggers it, seeing when it's arising, then we can work on it. We can see how those things affect our speech and our thinking and our actions. And we can work on letting them go. The other thing, the wonderful thing of letting go. That's a large part of our practices. Well, first acceptance and then letting go. Accepting something, letting it come and go. Not holding on to it, not clinging on to the past. Or clinging on to our habits of mind. And if we can accept our own anger and fear and ill will and all that, then we can have compassion for the anger and fear and ill will of other beings, because they're just like us. We're not demonizing them. It's not like they're completely separate from us. We're actually some kind of like them. We could be them, And if we try to remember that we're all one human race, I keep saying this, but I'm going to keep saying it. We're all one human race. We're all subject to the same sufferings of birth, old age, sickness and death, just as the Buddha saw, and he wanted to do something about the suffering. Well, he couldn't take away old age, birth, old age, sickness and death, but he could help people to learn to suffer less within them. We may still have pain, we still get old and sick, we still die, but we don't have to make it such a big suffering as we do. We can learn to accept these things, to work on them as we can. When we accept pain, it's immeasurably helpful, rather than fighting against it. Whether it's physical pain, mental pain, spiritual pain, any kind of pain. If we're fighting against it, it's a real suffering. But if you can accept it, I have this now. I do my best with it. Maybe we take medicine for it. Maybe we can't, who knows. but to do our best by sitting still in the midst of it, accepting it, doing what we can, and not fighting against it, whatever it might be. Pain, fear, illness, all these things. And all human beings are subject to these things. Nobody is exempt from old age, sickness, and death. You might die young, but you don't get away with the whole thing. Life is hard for everybody, actually. It's not easy for anyone, no matter what it looks like. All beings are subject to fear and hatred, and all of us are subject to joy and kindness and love and compassion. It's not just a dark picture. Everybody has goodness within themselves. You just don't always see it. And if you can remember that we all have both good aspects, so, what we call good aspects and the harmful aspect, we're all capable of killing, actually, probably. If the situation was dire, most of us would probably defend our life. We're all capable of great love and compassion and of laying down that life for the sake of another being. We see it all the time. People doing amazing things to help someone they don't even know, rescuing a complete stranger from a burning car and so forth. Happens all the time. People we know just give their lives for the service of other people, whether they're doctors or they work in a soup kitchen or whatever they do, political activism. Sometimes some people are that way inclined. Whatever we can do to help, but without anger and righteousness. I'm right and I've got to fix the world. That doesn't help a whole lot. But if we can do something about ourselves, and if we can see other beings with kindness and sympathy, they're not that different from us. We're all made of the same stuff. We're not different. Then we can sympathize with people. And those we find hard to sympathize with, those who do terrible things. As I said, we could be those people. They're not that different from us. And they have goodness too. It's just hard for them to find it. But all of us have Buddha nature. All of us are part of Buddha nature. All of us have that nobility of spirit and that connection with all other beings. People try to deny it, in many situations, but actually they can't negate it. All of us are part of that human condition. Nobody different, nobody separate. All of us the same in many ways. And we have our differences. But the things that unite us are far more and far greater than the things that divide us when you think of it. Because all of us are just human beings living in this little temporary human body on this little planet that we're trying not to wreck. We're all in the same situation, really. And if we can think of things that way and live from that point of view rather than me versus everybody else out there, it helps immensely with our suffering. We can feel more joy in life. We're not so afraid of people because they're not that different from us. We may be afraid of somebody with a gun, but it's not the same as just being afraid out in the street because there's all these people I don't know and who knows what they're going to do. But just say, here we all are together. It doesn't make us any less safe to think of it that way without being foolish. We may not have the same views, but we still have the same basic situation as human beings in this world. If we can cultivate feelings of goodwill and compassion towards those around us and people we don't even know or don't like or whom we may fear, this helps us greatly with our own fear and worry and distrust. If we can just cultivate goodwill, cultivate thoughts of kindness, and that radiates out and helps everybody. The merit of our training, offering merit, which is like offering thoughts of goodwill towards somebody, whether it's somebody we know and love or somebody we don't know or people we don't like at all, people who are doing harm. To offer merit for people. People who are doing harm are not the happiest people in this world. Anybody who's doing harmful things is not a happy person because they have the karmic consequence of that. Already they feel disassociated from everybody else because they're harming people. And people who don't do that are much more likely to have a joyful life. So we can offer merit, excuse me, for those who do harm, because they need merit, they need help, they need compassion. They may bite our hand if they heard it, we said that, but still, it's still good to offer merit and kindness towards the people we may not particularly fancy. To continue to have faith in our human race, not to give up on us, not to give up on ourselves, not to give up on our species, not to give up on our world. Having faith in our innate goodness, even when it seems hard to see. The innate goodness of beings, to trust in that it will actually prevail. The Dalai Lama is a wonderful example of this. His whole country has been horribly damaged and his people are being killed and all that. And he still will not nourish a heart of resentment or despair. He still says, I have hope for the future. I have hope for the future. It may not be the way people would wish or that he would wish, but he has not given up on this human race. And that is exemplary. Because if anyone would be upset, it would be somebody whose whole nation has been largely destroyed or severely damaged probably beyond recall. And yet he still cherishes loving kindness, hope, compassion, goodness, and joy, actually. So we can do that. We may not be like the Dalai Lama, but we can aspire to transform the attitudes we have towards the conditions of our lives. We all have difficult things in our lives. And we all have joy now and then. And not to let the hardness overcome that tendency to joy that everybody has, but to cherish that and nourish it. It's fine to feel joyful. We don't have to feel wretched about the world all the time. It doesn't help. There's enough wretchedness. To have a little joy is just fine. And that also is helpful to cultivate kindness, compassion, sympathy, and joy. We're all part of the Buddha body. We're all part of this one being. And the more we can live from that, rather than separation, the more we can actually help that Buddha body. The more we can help ourselves, and we can help our world. So our Bhaisajya Guru, the Buddha of healing, is not off somewhere else. It's actually us. It's our own aspiration to help heal ourselves and heal our world in our own little way. The medicine of the Dharma is right here and we can practice it. We are doing that right now. We can take the medicine and we can offer it to others just by doing our simple training. We're not trying to convert the world to Buddhism, just by doing our best to be kind, sympathetic, to help with stillness and wisdom. And that's our talk for the day.